Hello and welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I am your host, Demosthenes, and with me, as always, is our fantastic co-host, Mr. Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
What's going on, Demos? My introduction is music to my ears as we come into this week's topic. Pretty stoked, ready to do this thing.
Always prepared. Yes, music, film scores. They tantalize our brains with fantastic melodies that many times accentuate films from being possibly mediocre to something fantastic to something incredible. Can you imagine Star Wars without the Star Wars theme? Well, if you check out one of our past episodes, you can see that could be somewhat problematic. We want to show some love to our top 5 film scores that were never even nominated for an Academy Award. We have quite a bit to pick from.
Well, look, these are just some of my favorites that don't get nominated, and really, what I find also that happens all too often, and is a reason for a couple of the picks that I made, is that if the movie is a bomb, you never hear from some really good music ever again, right? I mean, look, we know who John Williams is. We know who Danny Elfman is. I don't believe I was about to lose his name right there. We know who Danny Elfman is, but not enough people know who Basil Polidorus is. And we're going to feature him at least one other time tonight. But, you know, just as an example of one I even thought about picking tonight was Starship Troopers. Not really a famous movie by any stretch of the imagination, but a great score in my opinion. And this certainly the one I'm going to pick here isn't a score for a movie that won any Academy Awards. If anything, it was a 90s summer blockbuster kind of movie that was there to eat popcorn and have a lot of fun with. And really, most of the sounds that are remembered are the sounds of Sean Connery talking about wanting to the prom queen, right? So, of course, I refer to The Rock. The epic with Nicolas Cage and Ed Harris as a villain in a rare form. But it's not about that. The theme to this movie is just a very simple theme, but it keeps everything moving along in a way where you know there's action. It slows it back to know when there's more of a stealth kind of element going on. And there's even kind of a touching melody in what is a cheesy and feels like kind of a forced relationship thing that they put in. You know, hey, this is an action movie, but let's throw in something for the chicks. It was just very forced, and I don't really like it when movies do that. But the music that they put behind it for the interaction with what would be Connery's character, Mason, with his estranged daughter, Jade, forces that is, I kind of like the theme behind that, too, when the two of them are on screen interacting with each other as well. And the biggest selling point for me is after I look at it within the film and feel it kind of capture the background of an incursion on an impregnable fortress like the Rock, aka Alcatraz, is. This is something that I'm able to pop into my CD player and basically like blow up stuff to video games with. I mean, granted, not so much the stuff meant for Connery and his daughter in the movie, but you know, just a very solid scoring all the way around. Do I necessarily think it deserved an Academy Award per se? Maybe not, but I think it's a fantastic score, not one you hear very much about.
I have to start with a couple things. Sean Connery's voice is a musical score in its own right.
Amen.
And The Rock is by far my favorite. There really aren't any other contenders, really. But my favorite Michael Bay movie, the one where explosions actually kind of made sense. The The musical score is an interesting one. I have a couple of things to say about the score. I'm actually going to save them for later in this episode, which is a little shocking. I'll get back to this. But I will say that the score in that movie definitely did energize. It was memorable. I wouldn't exactly, I wouldn't categorize it as memorable along the lines of, say, many of John Williams' tracks or
Sure.
famous.
It was one of my favorites. And remember the very thing I said is, should it get an Academy Award on its own? No, but I'll tell you, it's one of those things that may not be worthy of the acclaim of the Academy and things like that. But really, if I got in a movement to say, hey, put this in your workout track and you'll lose 5 more pounds, it might actually work. I'm gonna throw that out there. Look, Hans Zimmer is a weird character in the area of movie scores, and I'll get to it later in the show because he's going to come up again.
My first pick is, and you can probably tell by the shirts I am wearing, Back to the Future, Alan Silvestri, 1985. I was shocked when I found out, utterly shocked. It was, I actually yelled, "Great Scott," when I found out that it wasn't nominated. I think it's one of the best film scores of all time. It's as iconic to that film as the DeLorean is. When you think of Back to the Future, 2 thoughts come to mind, and that's the fantastic film score and the car. And I mean, obviously the film, the film series, but especially the first one, have a lot more going for it. But what's interesting about it is Steven Spielberg, who produced the film, when he was collaborating with director Robert Zemeckis, he was very adamant about getting John Williams to score Back to the Future. And Zemeckis, who had previously collaborated with composer Alan Silvestri in Romancing the Stone, another fantastic movie, was adamant. He wanted to stick with Silvestri. And Spielberg walked into some of the dailies, and they had some temp scores running over, and he heard a track, and he said it perked Spielberg's ears, and he said, "That's a track. That's the kind of score we need for this film. It's perfect for it." And it turned out that it was Alan Silvestri's initial score for Back to the Future. He heard the main theme. It's just fantastic. You hear it, it's rousing. It gets you pumped for adventure. It's not just the main theme. It's the suspense music, the tick-tock nature of the suspense theme at the end. The entire thing is fantastic.
There is one place where your analysis falls short, my friend. If you're going to talk about things that are iconic within the Back to the Future series, well, not the series, but the first movie in particular, obviously. And we're on an episode that's talking about scores, granted, but it's about music. If there's a mistake, this is it. I got some news for you.
Power of Love.
Not just the Power of Love. That band, period, my man. Hell yeah.
Well, funny you should say that, but Huey Lewis and the News is The Power of Love was nominated that year for Best Song.
So there you go.
But Alan Silvestri, the musical score, it's a separate entity from that one song.
Sure.
Power of Love is very much part of the soul of Back to the Future. That is very true. But it's in a distinct category of itself.
So, internet trolls that was about to say something, this is how it's different. We're talking scores, not musical soundtracks per se.
Now, sometimes there's some films that it blends, especially films where the composer of the score also composes the music. I mean, look at many musicals, look at many Disney films, for instance. There's a reason why there are a lot of Disney films that win Best Score and Best Song, going all the way back to Pinocchio, 1940. But yeah, Back to the Future, the whole trilogy, but especially that first film, what a terrific score.
Well, next up, listen, I had no idea this was going to happen this way. And I feel kind of boring that it went this way, but I feel compelled to do this. When it comes to scores, you need something sometimes that has a theme throughout, but is still present when there is a ballad, some sort of a slow melodic thing, or whether you're called to action and to swatch or swashbuckle. How does the term one come up with the term swashbuckler? How does that even happen? But it did, and that term eventually led us to the movie that then inspired a bunch of cheesy crap afterward. Of course, I'm referring to Pirates of the Caribbean being The Curse of the Black Pearl, the one that started it all and the place where it should have ended. We have Captain Jack Sparrow. We have Orlando Bloom as Pretty Boy Turner there. Well, okay, he's not known as Pretty Boy Turner in the movie, but if you're Orlando Bloom, I'm sorry, you're pretty. That's never going to change.
The man played an elf. I mean...
Exactly. I'm always going to see Legolas. You beat me to it. Exactly. That being said, man, that score, though. I believe in the previous sound episode extra that you put up there before, you actually put in the Pirates of the Caribbean theme into a Star Wars scene, and it looked and sounded wonderful. If you can imagine that, except, with real swords and not rotoscoped light, you're all set. And it's a beautiful thing. But the part when you're on the high seas and you're doing the thing and people are getting more of the inspirational look when the sails drop and the ship starts to flow, you need something with a little bit more epic and grandeur. And the part that blows my mind is taking the fast theme that it has there, the main dun 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 dun, that, and then just slowing it down. And now it's more of an epic, courageous ballad type of a song, and it still works. That's the mark of proper composition.
It's flexible.
Well, go ahead.
It's flexible. It's a flexible theme.
Yes, exactly. And the part, again, this is Hans Zimmer, but Christ knows all that beats the hell out of something that's either a set of two-note darkness from The Dark Knight and I'm sorry, Demos, but how do you go from and to it's not the same. I mean, I sent you the YouTube clip of what a Reaper sounds like, or excuse me, what a Reaper sounds like in Mass Effect, okay? Okay, that guy played Mass Effect and just recorded that over it. Bingo. Okay.
I think that's a classic soundbite that has gone back to every single percussion student production ever. Whenever they miss a note.
When they miss a note. Because what I'm picturing when you were first saying that before we got to the miss a note part, Trebonius, I know this very sounds. What know you, sir? What
light through yonder window breaks? It is a yeah. To or not to yeah.
That is the question, and the answer is always not to okay. Thank you.
Now you know what? Pirates of the Caribbean, the first film, had a couple of interesting themes that I feel like the latter films kind of missed out on. The specifically Jack's theme in that film, and that perfect. They expanded on it in the next films and made it clownish, but My personal favorite is the Will and Elizabeth theme, which is the theme that I edited into the Phantom Menace in the previous video. Just listening to that piece of music, you just cannot, separately from the film. Just if I sat somebody down, made them listen to that song without ever having seen Pirates of the Caribbean, they are likely to imagine sword fighting, classic style. But I find it very intriguing that you happen to pick The Rock and Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, although the first Pirates of the Caribbean was officially credited to Klaus Badlitz, Hans Zimmer was the one who produced it and pretty much was responsible for a lot of the main themes in that film. You can almost separate where Badlitz's endeavors end and where Zimmer's begin. Notice the themes that are not used in the later films. But those two, Hans Zimmer is an intriguing musician. I think he's done a lot of great stuff. Most recently, Sherlock Holmes, the theme he did for the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, an incredible theme. It deserved its nomination. Yes. And of course, The Lion King, which is one of Disney's most powerful scores. He has a tendency to repeat himself. And if you listen to the pirate score and then you watch some of the early Zimmer films, you'll catch a lot of almost lifted, recycled material that found its way into Pirates. Look at Gladiator, look at Crimson Tide, look at especially Drop Zone. But probably the biggest film that contributed towards Pirates was The Rock. I can take literal tracks from The Rock, play it back to back with Pirates, and it's almost the exact same theme. Almost to the notes.
I have a feeling you're going to be smooth and edit something. You're going to put up something smooth. I'm going to watch this in post and be like, oh my God. That's not something that I can say I picked up immediately on my own.
I'll be honest, it wasn't until a recent viewing of The Rock, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And then I literally took the tracks, played them back to back, did some research online. It turns out I'm not the only schmuck who caught this. And
you're not new, dog.
I will say it did lessen my appreciation quite a bit for Pirates.
In an instance like that, where the movies are so different, there are certain instances where the same sound might evoke a different response, but in the context that we're talking about it, totally understand why you catch that as a touch lazy.
Still fantastic score. I enjoyed listening to it. I have them all. The first one is definitely the most interesting of the musical scores. The most recent one, I'd rather not speak about it.
Wow.
Yeah, one of these days I may have to do an entire episode about how much I hate Pirates of the Caribbean 5.
Oh.
And that's going to be the coda. That explains exactly how I feel about the movie. Demos, how do you feel about Pirates of the Caribbean 5? Wah. Usually followed by a gunshot and a scream, but nevertheless.
Wait, no.
Exactly. That's Pirates of the Caribbean 5 in a symphonic nutshell. So my next pick is actually a pairing. And I have a very specific reason. I wouldn't call it a tie because I think these two scores are very complementary. They're back-to-back Hitchcock films and back-to-back compositions for Hitchcock by a fantastic scorer, Bernard Herrmann.
Boom.
So Bernard Herrmann did a magnificent score for North and Northwest and one of his most iconic scores for Psycho. You cannot watch a slasher film nowadays without some echoes of
Right. That is real as hell, dude. That's a good call by you.
Hell, I mean, I recently for Halloween I watched The Reanimator. Have you ever seen The Reanimator?
Can't say that I have. No.
I would not call it a family film. There literally is a shot of a live severed head performing on a naked woman, and I'm
well, okay. So let me be honest. That's a completely different direction than I thought of when you said that. Because when you said The Reanimator, I pictured Arnold Schwarzenegger doing animation. I am an animator. Do. But that's completely different.
No, it's about Walt Disney and how he recycled some of his early work. No, its entire score is, we're talking about lifting and copying. That entire score is a direct copy of Psycho, with a little bit of an extra drum beat.
This is how I know you're good at your job, Demos. You're talking about a reanimated head performing on a chick in a movie, but you're like, that music.
Back to North Northwest. I've already spoken on this show about my appreciation for that film. It's a film whose influence has it directly inspired the tone of the James Bond films. It directly inspired for the tone of Indiana Jones. In many ways, it could be considered the first contemporary action film, but very different than what you would imagine with Psycho. You can actually look at the similarities between the two films, even within the Saul Bass opening animation titles. In North Northwest, you have a grid that's set on a diagonal plane, or in Psycho, where those same lines suddenly go off in crazy directions, and giving you a sense of chaos. Both films have kind of a whirly motif to their themes, kind of going down the drain, losing control. Where in North by Northwest, it's much more, you have a lot more of a percussion punch to it. In Psycho, with the use of its strings versus North by Northwest percussion, you kind of get a sense of danger, a sense of getting getting stabbed in a way. I'm trying not to be as straightforward. I think it's very intriguing just to compare the two because it's two sides of a coin.
I can see why you paired these two songs. I shouldn't say songs, scores, by Herman here, because really it shows an expanse. You're more paying a tribute to the composer there, in that this is just a wide-ranged performance between these two movies. They're both Hitchcock films. There's so much that's similar, and yet the difference comes through.
If I really wanted to showcase the talents of Bernard Herrmann, I would throw in the immediate predecessor by Hitchcock to both of these films, which is his score for Vertigo. It's a terrific score, but it's not I can't really place it in the same realm as Northwest and Psycho, because those two.
Yeah, it's almost like Jazz Club by comparison.
Yeah, Vertigo has a slow, hypnotic quality. The brilliance of the score in Vertigo is that you don't recognize the power that it has on you. The score for Vertigo is as devious as the film is. In North and Northwest and in Psycho, the score is much, much more prevalent, should I say. It is...
It's prevalent and it's relevant. It's prelevant.
I just made up a new word. Say that I'm wrong. Come on, dictionary, I dare you.
That's how inspired you were. Don't fight it, Demos. It's art, and it grabbed you in such a way. Man.
So our final pick is the one that actually inspired this very episode. And when I mentioned the thought to Kyle, this was the very first movie that popped into his mind. So we're actually going to present this as both our pick. It's the operatic score to the original Conan the Barbarian by Basil Poledouris, and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Say what you want about that film. At worst, you can say it's the film itself is mediocre, but by God, that score.
Puts a goddamn chime in the middle of a song like this and makes it sound like an anvil. That's the stuff I'm talking about, man. This score, look, I'll admit bias here. I performed this in a halftime show during my marching band years, okay? My senior year in high school and all that. But I don't care. I was blessed that year to be somebody who plays trombone and low brass, because just simply the cojones one requires to play this score, to be a part of the score, to absorb this score. Oh, man. Look,
and there's
who needs a testosterone supplement? Just pop this bitch in the player. I'm just saying.
There's so many layers to the score beyond the opening, anvil of Crom number. I mean, the opening scene where you see his backstory, which is reminiscent of O Fortuna, or my personal favorite, and it's probably my favorite sequence in the film because I know I mentioned the word hypnotic earlier with Vertigo. This is hypnotic in a different way, but there is a scene where Conan and his friends have to infiltrate James Earl Jones's lair,
Rex.
and yeah, there's almost a 10-minute sequence of nothing but the score playing over all the fantastic imagery that they're coming about. I mean, essentially they find James Earl Jones turning into a snake during an orgy. I don't know how I can say that sentence without sounding weird, but that's what's happening. But the score raises the ludicrous nature of this environment and what the scene, and just transforms it into something magical in a way. It's a score that is it can be argued it's too good for the film. It just really elevates this film into something far more grand than its source material.
Basil Polidorus. Can we pay a little tribute to him? If you have never seen Conan the Barbarian, #you problem. By the way, the RoboCop score, where you see a big ass freaking robot drive around and beat the shit out of crime, yeah, that's this guy too. Oh, by the way, for those of you who like camp films and watch Starship Troopers, you know, you have music that backs political propaganda. Go right into a scene where, you know, a bunch of people are blowing up bugs with guns. It's freaking Basil Polidorus. Bruh, this guy, I'm telling you, GNC needs to get a hold of him for audio testosterone supplements. I'm just saying.
You should have played the orgy theme from Conan during the co-ed shower scene in Starship Troopers. That would have made it so much cooler. My first experience, actually, the first score by Basil Polidorus I ever heard was his score for The Hunt for October, which is also quite incredible. I take it back. I think Hunt for October was not my first one. Free f***ing Willy was my first one.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he did the score for Free Willy.
What?
I'm pretty certain.
Oh, bull! You can keep talking. I'm IMDbing that stuff right. Music by Basil Polidorus. Look at this motherfucker. What the shit is this? How? How is it the same guy that gives me Conan, RoboCop, For the Love of the Game? Are you kidding me?
Basil Polidorus has a way of surprising you.
Ruined my life, Demos. I did not know this about this man.
Well, that just about does it for today's episode of Default Assault. You didn't see your favorite score on this episode. Let us know in the comments below. I happen to know of one John Williams score that a lot of people are probably screaming at their screens right now. Scream it in the comments. Let us know. We may follow it up sometime. And make sure to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
He did Mickey Blue Eyes? Are you kidding me?
You're still on that. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Default Hilarity, on Facebook, Hilarity by Default, and on my website, hilaritybydefault.com, for lots of more fun videos, articles, movie reviews, you name it. Kyle, where can we find you?
In a stunned and bewildered state, you can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. And of course, you can find me on Facebook as the Student of the Game. And of course, when I'm not here with Demos, I am covering the University of Central Florida Knights in their campaign to make it to national prominence, as they're currently ranked 15th in the AP poll and 18th in the college football playoff poll. Don't know how that works exactly, but hey, I'm not the one in the room making the decisions. All I can tell you is you could go to ngscsports.com for all my sports works that I do other than that. He did Les Mis, too. Anyways, but that'll do it for me. And my final word for you tonight, folks, is Bwah.
I should point out it's not the musical Les Mis, the regular the Liam Neeson film, if I remember correctly. But that just reminds you that life is truly hilarious by default, especially when your mind is blown by freaking Basil Polydorus.
Man,